On March 3rd, 2025, three Toyota 4Runners sat nose to tail in my shop's back lot, and every one of them told a different story about what built to last actually means. The first was a 2005 silver paint gone chalky, 311,000 miles on the clock, still running its original transmission. The second was a 2015 black, 306,000 miles, owned by a contractor who used it to haul tools 5 days a week for a decade. The third was brand new, a 2025 model with barely 4,000 miles, sitting there looking almost embarrassed next to the other two. Today, I am revealing which Toyota 4Runner generation actually earns the reputation this nameplate is famous for, and which one is coasting on a badge it did not fully deserve. I have spent over 20 years working on these trucks, and I can tell you the internet's answer to this question is usually lazy. People say just buy a 4Runner, they all last forever, and move on. That is not research. That is a bumper sticker. The truth is more specific, more interesting, and more useful if you are actually about to spend your money on one of these. Here is what most buyers do not know. The 4Runner nameplate has survived on reputation built mostly by one generation, while the others rode along on that halo without fully earning it. One generation had a genuine design flaw baked into its frame. Another quietly became one of the most bulletproof mid-size sport utility vehicles Toyota has ever built. And the newest one is running an entirely different kind of engine, one that has never had to prove itself over a decade of real-world abuse. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which generation to chase, which one to avoid, unless you know what you are getting into, and why the badge on the hood does not mean what most people assume it means. Let's start with the 2005. This is a third-generation 4Runner, built between 2003 and 2009, and it rolled into my shop because the owner wanted an honest opinion before handing it down to his daughter. On paper, this generation should be a slam dunk. It uses the 4.0-liter V6 or the 4.7-liter V8, both of which are mechanically strong engines with a well-earned reputation for going the distance. I have seen these blocks outlast the rest of the truck around them more times than I can count. But here is what the internet does not tell you enough. The third-generation 4Runner has a documented frame corrosion problem. Owners have been dealing with this for over a decade. Toyota already ran a major buyback and rust compensation program for the same era Tacoma, Tundra, and Sequoia because those frames were treated with an inadequate rust-proofing process from the factory. The 4Runner from this same window shares that vulnerability, and while Toyota never extended the exact same buyback to 4Runner owners, a class action lawsuit was filed specifically alleging that 2003 through 2009 frames rust prematurely because of that same manufacturing shortfall. When I put this truck on the lift, I found exactly what I expected. Surface rust had progressed past cosmetic and into structural territory along the rear frame rail, the kind of corrosion that starts as a rattle and ends as a truck that fails inspection. That was not the only ghost in this generation's closet. The 4.7-liter V8 in these trucks is famous in mechanic circles for a specific failure: the secondary air injection pump. This system pushes fresh air into the exhaust manifold right after cold start to help the catalytic converter light off faster and cut emissions. On these V8 trucks, that pump fails constantly, throwing the truck into limp mode and costing anywhere from $900 to $3,000 to sort out properly, depending on whether you replace just the pump or the whole air injection system. Toyota actually issued a special service campaign in November 2011, extending the warranty on this exact part because so many were failing outside the normal coverage window. If your third-generation 4Runner still runs perfectly at 300,000 miles, it is not because the design was flawless. It is because someone stayed ahead of the frame rust with regular undercoating and already dealt with that air pump years ago. This generation rewards owners who know its specific weak points and punishes anyone who assumes Toyota reliability means zero maintenance. The V6-equipped trucks from this era have their own quirk worth knowing about. Earlier 4.0-liter engines from the very start of this generation had a documented tendency toward head gasket failure, especially past the 100,000-mile mark, showing up as coolant loss with no visible external leak, or a slow creep toward overheating on long highway pulls. It is not the kind of failure that strands you without warning, but it is the kind that quietly eats a transmission or warps ahead if it goes unnoticed for too long. And then there are the brakes. The 2003 through 2005 trucks in particular built a reputation for front calipers that seize and drag, something owners reported even after replacing the calipers outright, which tells you this was less about a bad batch of parts and more about a design that never fully got sorted for this application. None of these problems, on their own, are disqualifying. Stacked together, they explain why a third-generation 4Runner at 300,000 miles is usually a truck that had an attentive owner rather than an easy life. Now let's talk about the 2015 model, because this is where the story changes completely. This is a fourth-generation 4Runner, built from 2010 all the way through 2024, an unusually long production run that tells you something on its own. Toyota does not keep a platform in production for 15 years unless it is working. Under the hood sits the 1GRFE 4.0-liter V6, a direct evolution of the engine already proven in the previous generation, paired now with a smoother 5-speed automatic and a chassis that had a decade of lessons baked into it before it ever reached a dealership lot. When I got this truck up on the lift, the difference from the 2005 model was immediate. No frame corrosion issue because Toyota adjusted the rust-proofing process for this generation. No air injection pump drama because that failure point had already been engineered around. What I found instead were exactly the kind of wear items you expect on any truck crossing 300,000 miles. Worn control arm bushings, a tired set of rear shocks, and if this particular trim had the XREAS hydraulic suspension system, that is a known weak point worth checking, since the hydraulic shocks in that system can leak and turn a smooth ride into a harsh one, with repairs running $1,200 to $3,000 if the pump and lines need replacing. This particular truck did not have XREAS, and its suspension issues were nothing more than ordinary fatigue at 300,000 miles. Here is the number that should genuinely surprise you. According to an IC Cars study analyzing over 1 million used vehicle listings, the Toyota 4Runner ranks third out of 30 models most likely to reach 250,000 miles, with roughly 27% of 4Runners on the road actually getting there, nearly 3 times the rate of the average vehicle in that study. And when the same data was cut for vehicles reaching 200,000 miles, the 4Runner came in at a 48% chance, the strongest showing of any midsize SUV in that entire category. That statistic is not describing the third generation with its frame rust problem. It is not describing a brand new fifth generation with a few thousand miles on it. It is describing exactly this window, the trucks built between 2010 and 2024, where Toyota had already learned from every mistake in the earlier design and had not yet introduced the turbocharged engine that came after it. Owners of this generation report shift solenoid issues that can make the transmission hesitate to engage, typically showing up somewhere between 25,000 and 150,000 miles, but that is a $200 to $400 fix, not a rebuild. Compare that to a cracked frame or a $3,000 exhaust system failure, and you start to understand why mechanics like me talk about the fourth generation differently than the rest of the lineup. This is the version of the 4Runner that actually built the reputation everyone assumes applies to the whole nameplate. Once these trucks cross the 200,000-mile mark, the failure pattern becomes almost predictable, and predictable is exactly what you want in a used vehicle. Radiators and water pumps start to age out around this point, not because of a design flaw, but because rubber and plastic components simply do not last forever, regardless of the badge on the hood. Control arm bushings soften, shocks lose their damping, and owners describe the ride getting a little floatier than it used to be. This is ordinary mechanical aging, the same story every long-lived vehicle eventually tells, and every part on that list is a routine wear item, not a structural failure. That distinction matters more than people realize. A frame rusting through is a design problem. A shock absorber wearing out at 220,000 miles is just physics. The fourth generation gives you almost exclusively the second kind of problem, which is exactly why it holds its value so well on the used market, even well past 200,000 miles. Now for the 2025, the one sitting there with 4,000 miles, looking almost too clean to belong next to the other two. This is the brand new fifth generation, and it represents the biggest mechanical shift in this truck's history. Gone is the naturally aspirated V6 that carried this nameplate for over 20 years. In its place sits a 2.4-liter turbocharged four-cylinder offered in standard form and in the iForce Max hybrid configuration, the same basic engine family now shared across the Tacoma, the Grand Highlander, the Lexus GX, and the Lexus RX. I want to be straight with you here, because this is the part of the video where I could easily just tell you what you want to hear. I cannot show you a fifth-generation 4Runner with 300,000 miles on it, because that truck does not exist yet. Nobody can. It has been on sale for barely a year. Anyone on the internet confidently telling you this generation will or will not last 300,000 miles is guessing, and you should be skeptical of anyone who claims otherwise. What I can tell you is what early owners and technicians are already flagging. Turbocharged engines run hotter than the naturally aspirated V6 they replaced, which puts more thermal stress on the plastic components, hoses, and gaskets under the hood over years of use, not just miles. Early reports mention turbo lag, some inconsistency in throttle response, and occasionally jerky transitions between electric and gas power on the hybrid version. The kind of software-related rough edges that are common on a first-year platform and typically get refined through updates rather than requiring hardware replacement. There is also a more practical concern. This turbocharged engine needs a lot of clean air, and a neglected air filter can trigger sensors and pull the truck into a protective mode faster than the old V6 ever would have. None of that means the fifth generation is doomed. Toyota has a strong track record of getting turbocharged engines right once the platform matures, and the fundamentals underneath, the frame, the drivetrain layout, the body-on-frame construction that makes a 4Runner, are still there. But betting your money on unproven technology reaching 300,000 miles is a different bet than buying a fourth-generation truck with over a decade of real-world data already behind it. One is a documented fact. The other is a hypothesis. So here is the clear winner, and I want to explain exactly why, because just buy the newest one and just buy the cheapest one are both wrong answers here. The fourth generation, 2010 through 2024, is the version of the Toyota 4Runner that most deserves the reputation the nameplate carries. It kept the proven 4.0-liter V6 that already had a track record from the previous generation. It fixed the frame rust vulnerability that haunts the third generation. It never had the secondary air injection pump failure that plagued the early V8 trucks. And it has over a decade of real ownership data, proving it can cross 300,000 miles doing exactly what a 4Runner is supposed to do, which is nothing dramatic at all. No catastrophic failures, no class action lawsuits, no factory buyback programs. Just an unusually boring truck that keeps starting every morning. The third generation earns respect, but not a blank check. If you already own one or you are looking at one, get it on a lift. Check that frame carefully for rust beyond surface level, and if it has the V8, ask directly whether the secondary air injection pump has already been dealt with. If both of those boxes are checked, these trucks absolutely can and do reach 300,000 miles, because the engines underneath were never the problem. The fifth generation deserves your attention, not your certainty. It is a genuinely impressive piece of engineering with more power, better efficiency, and a hybrid option the older trucks never offered. But if longevity past 300,000 miles is the entire reason you are drawn to this nameplate in the first place, you are choosing to be one of the first people to find out whether that turbocharged engine can actually deliver it. Some of you will want to be that person. Most of you should probably let someone else's truck cross 200,000 miles first. If you already own a 4Runner, tell me which generation it is and how many miles are on it right now. I want to see how these numbers actually hold up in the real world, not just in a study. If you are shopping for one, hit like, so this reaches more people before they overpay for the wrong generation, and subscribe, because next week I am pulling apart exactly what a pre-purchase inspection on a high-mileage 4Runner should actually include. The stuff most buyers skip that ends up costing them thousands 6 months later. The 4Runner's reputation is real. It just was not earned equally by every generation wearing the badge.